I'm Peter Marks, and I was a theater critic at the Washington Post and New York Times. And now when I'm asked what I'm doing, I say anything I want. And this is my co-host, Elisabeth. Hello. Oops, I forgot. Elisabeth Vincentelli, co-host of Marks and Vincentelli, is absent today, but she will be back for our next episode. So it's my pleasure, my great pleasure, in fact, to be the sole interlocutor for my guest today, Jay Wegman, who presides over one of the most intriguing theaters in New York these days, and one of the few that vitally fills a gap in the diet of devoted theatergoers. You may or may not have heard of Skirball, which to me sounds like a game in a boardwalk arcade. It's actually the NYU Skirball Center for the Performing Arts, and Jay has been its director for 8 years, joining Skirball from another off-Broadway institution, the Abrons Arts Center. Skirball, located just off Washington Square in the heart of Greenwich Village, has what's evolved into a unique mission in the theater ecosystem. And two of its most recent offerings illuminate the essential role it plays, and it was one of the reasons I wanted to talk to Jay, because I saw both and really loved them. One was a really long-form piece called Counting and Cracking, and if you saw it, you know how special it was. It came to the 852-seat theater from Australia, and you'll know, if you saw it, while I call it essential, it was presented just recently in concert with the Public Theater at the Skirball. And it was the story of a Sri Lankan family told in both Sri Lanka and Australia from 1956 to 2004. It unfolded over 3.5 hours and for me seemed to pass in the blink of an eye. The theatricality was just special and inventive, and not bells and whistles, but done really organically and smartly. The story told several generations of this family amid the political turmoil in Sri Lanka and the cultural adjustment of this family to Australia. And this Australian theater company really evoked so beautifully with a large cast this multi-generational story. Then from Belgium, I came to see a performance piece. I mean, I didn't come from Belgium, but it's from Belgium. I came to see the performance piece. It was called One Song. I had no idea what was going to happen. And actually, it's not only a performance piece, it could have qualified as an Olympic event. The title said it all. It was one continuous song performed over the course of an hour by a dozen actor, musician, athletes on balance beams and treadmills, original as hell, complete with a chorus in the grandstands cheering them on. Unique is the operative word here, and we have Jay Wegman to thank for these remarkable and one-of-a-kind theater experiences that Skirball is championing. So it is my pleasure, with that long intro, to welcome Jay Wegman to the podcast. Hi, Jay.
Hi, Peter. Thank you.
So Jay, let's get right into it. I think it's really interesting that you have carved out this niche in this really crowded marketplace for pieces of all sorts, not just international and not just global, but also domestic, also from this country. How do you describe your job as director of this center? And maybe explain a little bit about how you operate, because you're not a producer, you're a presenter.
Right. That does get confusing. So my job, I often say I'm the luckiest person I know. I get to work in a great university with some of the best, smartest people I've ever met, and also get to bring or invite world-class artists to the stage there. We always say it's the NYU's largest classroom because truly they do use it as a classroom Monday through Thursday from 8 to 10, and that can be kind of tiresome and burdensome. But we actually kind of look at it as a classroom. We set up all kinds of educational materials around it and everything. So we do we just try to help. We look both into the university and definitely outside of the university. So we're Janus like. We stand there on the bottom of Washington Square Park and rock and roll.
So you're owned by NYU,
Yes,
but
yes.
you're an independent aspect of it. No, a
No,
satellite of it. No.
we're fully a program of NYU. That comes with a lot of good things, but some burdens. People often assume that NYU is bankrolling everything, and there's a
Right.
big pot of money down there,
Right.
and that's not the case.
Mm.
We certainly have to do our fair share of fundraising and all of that, and also it can get kind of competitive within the university because first and foremost, NYU is a university. Its primary mission is not Skirball. So we're there to
Right.
support
Sure.
the mission.
Right.
But yeah, we are fully NYU, proudly NYU. So
But
yeah.
so was the mission, the notion to make it this platform that goes beyond the academic requirements of the university, and to really make it a magnet for theater and other performing arts at the university?
Just briefly, it was built roughly 20 years ago by a very dynamic, very thoughtful university president named Jay Oliva. And it was his
Oh,
dream
sure.
and frustration that there was no performing arts center at NYU, despite, the legacy of all the artists that it produced. And so his I call it the golden parachute. So he retired, but he took over running Skirball for the first 5 years of its
Mm.
life, and then they had another person run it for a while, and then when that person left, they did kind of a search, and they knew what they were getting into with me because at Abrams we were totally letting our freak flag fly. Um, and so,
On the Lower East Side at the Henry Street Settlement, correct?
exactly, it's down on Grand Street on the corner of Pitt. So I had been there for 10 years and I had a really fun time there. Um, but 10 years is a perfect time to go look at greener horizons. So
Hmm.
they knew what they were getting into, and they just wanted the programming there to be a vibrant source of inspiration, creativity, uh, just knowing that NYU is proud of it being one of the world-class research universities, then
Mm.
the arts at Scribble are kind of viewed as research, but not
Mm.
just for the students, for anybody. So the niche we've carved out truly is kind of unique. I mean, there's BAM, there's the Armory. We all three of us bring international work, but we've been lucky at Skirball to our location. It's very easy to get to,
Hmm.
and also our reputation is building up internationally that a lot of artists want to come perform there. So
Totally.
that's rather flattering. So like Meet Warlop, you just were talking about. This was her New York premiere,
With one song.
and but she's been making work for a good 20, 25 years. And this piece came through Avignon Festival. And the New York Times had at the year-end roundup, they had said it was one of the top five events in Europe. And I actually had never seen it live until it came to New York. I
Wow.
mean, I'd seen videos of it. Everybody loves it. I'm not the type of person who has to see something before we invite it. If
Mm.
I have a talent, I would say I'm fairly good with my intuition about what may or may not um, appeal or succeed. And also, when I say succeed, that doesn't necessarily mean sell out all the time. One of the best things we ever did, I don't know what happened there. The weather wasn't bad or anything, but we had like 200 people there for this magical event. And I just remember being, oh, it was crushing. But so yeah, success is great if the audiences come and love it and the reviews.
Mm.
But at the same time, success for me at least is, you know what, we tried. It was a really good piece. Unfortunately, not everybody who I wanted to come see it saw it.
Yeah,
So
I that's noble to me. That means your head's screwed on straight. It shouldn't be just driven by box office, and especially since you have the umbrella of a major academic institution that, as you say, has interests beyond just churning ticket sales. They really do want these things to be attended by their community and to be enriched by it. So that makes complete sense. I should just tell the audience, I met Jay at a theater festival in Santiago, Chile, the Teatro a Mil Festival, the wonderful festival that's a annual showcase mostly of Latin American work. And we hit it off just talking, and I got a great kick out of watching Jay watch these productions because I was really curious about how someone does curate a major institution and how do those choices happen. And I really never got a chance to really grill him about, what he goes through, because I know you travel, Jay, extensively to other festivals
I
to
do.
see to
I'm lucky.
scout.
Yep, yep,
How,
exactly.
so what's essential for you, Jay? I mean, you said you don't necessarily have to see it in person, the piece you're going to do. But by the way, how many pieces do you import a year, or how many do you present a year?
We generally present about 18 different productions.
Wow.
Some of those are, well, we flip the space frequently. So the longest we do is 2 to maybe a 3 week run.
Right.
Um, And the shortest are sometimes it's just a one night only thing, especially we have a really good relationship with the International Contemporary Ensemble. They're better known as ICE. And they just do one night gigs. So, but the most important thing for me is a balance of dance, performance, theater, a little bit of music. We don't do that much, maybe once or twice a year. And also a global perspective.
Mm.
I don't want to do the National Geographic thing where, okay, now we'll bring something from China.
Right.
But it's also important, I think, to invite these obscure artists. Well, they're not so obscure, say, in Europe or Korea,
Right.
but to American audiences. So
Mm.
my hope, my wish is
Mm.
that Skirball is really a home for the culturally curious. It's for, oh, wow, I don't know what this is, but I know it's going to be interesting.
Hmm.
It might frustrate me, it might piss me off, but at least I know it's not going to be a typical thing I might see elsewhere in New York City.
Well, that's
So,
it.
yeah.
I mean, there's the vacuum that you're filling. We think of ourselves, especially New York. I mean, certainly as a cosmopolitan city, but in many senses, we look inward. We navel gaze a lot more than we look outward beyond the borders, I think. I mean, you can find international work at some of the places you've described, Park Avenue Armory, at Brooklyn Academy of Music. There are the festivals like Under the Radar Festival that the public used to house and no longer does. But are you looking, so when you're looking, you mentioned Meet, the director of One Song. Are you looking for people with international reputations that you can introduce to a New York audience? Do you need some sense of a guarantee, even though you say, we had a show with that only 200 people showed up, but it was still, you were proud of it. Are you looking for things that you can ride sort of the coattails of these international artists, or are you looking more specifically at a work that just seems to be intriguing
Both.
to both?
Both, definitely both. It helps if there's name recognition behind it. I mean, that's always a good marketing draw. It's like, oh, I want to go see, Isabelle Hubert.
Right.
Um, but um, but at the same time, Meat Warlop isn't an international. It's not a household name here in the United
No.
States,
Right.
and also it was incredibly hard to describe what it was. It just
It is.
is.
Right.
Is it a sports event? I mean, it's framed within that, but is it as a concert? Is it a dance piece? Is it a theater piece? So that's one of the frustrations of
Hmm.
bringing work that people don't really know who's making it, just because it's hard to describe. Um, but certainly, uh, and some of these places, as I was saying before, artists are starting to pay attention to us because they see their colleagues or their fellow artists coming to New York and being presented here. So um, it is becoming kind of a love fest sometimes, that the artists start to write and say, "Oh, blah 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 blah," and we only do about 18 shows. Of those 18 productions, I would say about half are international. So when
Hmm.
you pare that down, that just means four, maybe five a term, because I think in terms of the fall and then the spring follows the academic year. We don't do anything in the summer. And in January, the J term, I've had a long term understanding with Mark Russell that Under the Radar will come to Skirball. And so
Mark
that,
Russell is obviously, for those who don't know, is the artistic director of the Under the Radar Festival, many years at the Public, a
yeah.
fixture of downtown theater as well.
And so and again this year, well, we just announced it. They, as of this recording, talking to you, they haven't announced it yet, but we've announced that we're doing a re-envisioned version of Showboat as part of Under the Radar, directed by David Herskovich from Target Margin. So, and that's actually going to be a long run for us. We have planned 3 weeks in January with a possible extension. Um,
Hmm.
so that so I'm just going back to that is not it again. That might be a little hard for people to wrap their heads around, because it's not going to be like encores. It's not going to be
Hmm.
what you see at City Center. It
Sure.
is going to be a fully mounted revival, and I don't even want to say it's akin to Daniel Fish's reimagined Oklahoma. It's probably going to land between there. It's going to be its own animal, but it is not going to be that 1950s version with Ava Gardner.
Well, we yeah, I you preempted me on Showboat. I was going to ask you about it, but since you brought it up, this does sort of like give people a sense of the breadth of what intrigues you and what Skirball can house as really interesting and adventurous endeavors. David Herskovitz has run the Target Margin Company off Broadway for many years. He's got a very singular aesthetic that he brings. It's rooted in a kind of a textual discipline and but with idiosyncratic gesture and also all kinds of interesting, I'd say, cultural land hallmarks that he sort of develops as almost there's almost a Herskovitzian mythology around his
That's,
work. I
that's
know that's
good.
quite a word,
That's good.
but
That's
but
good.
yes, I covered them for many years when I was at the Times. I went to many Target Margin productions. So, and he's taking, as I understand it, this is pre copyright. I mean, this is like it's
Uh,
outside the
well, it entered the public domain just last year, so
so this is a
we're only
1927, I think,
it,
production.
yes, and
Yeah.
so we can only use songs from that production. It's one of those shows that has been tinkered with, kind of like Sondheim did with Follies. So, but we're going back to the original script, which will be, you know, redacted and edited, um, and the songs from the original opening night production. So, but David's got a really fascinating take on this. It's really the story of the United States from, the 1840s 70s, I guess. It starts with steam power. It ends with electricity.
Wow.
It starts on a show boat, live performance, ends on radio. It's a story about the Great Migration up to Chicago. It's really a fabulous insight. He's bringing fabulous insights to the show that I have never even started to think about before. So it's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, well, I know you love musicals. I know
I,
that that is a particular passion of yours, Mr. Wegman. But
yeah,
I see the connection. I'm curious about how this is this is the result is this do but by the way, are you present you're presenting this?
we don't produce. So you asked me to talk about that. So producing is what Target Margin will be doing. They are dealing with equity. They are contracting the set designer, the lighting designer. We present, meaning we invite them into the space. They're going to be rather fully formed. We invite that in. We just don't have the bandwidth on staff to produce things, and also producing is a nightmare. So if somebody, so it's like, hey, we will pay you this amount of money, or we will figure out this box office arrangement or whatever, but you have to do that heavy lifting. We'll do all the, once you're in the house, we'll take care of it, meaning, our tech crew, our marketing team, all of that other stuff, but they bring the I hate to think of art as a commodity, but they'll bring the product,
I understand.
and we'll help get it
And
out.
so you provide like the box office staffing, the ticketing,
All of that,
the marketing.
all of that.
So that's why so it is a partnership. It's just that yours is not the creative side
Right,
in this one. You're not like
right.
sitting there like David Merrick going, "No, we need dancing girls in this
Yeah.
second act." You're not. That's not you.
No. And we do a lot of, world premieres, especially if they're from New York City, and I
Mm.
never involve myself. I've never seen myself as someone who sits on in rehearsals and offers my opinion, unless I'm asked. If I'm honestly asked, I will say, but yeah, that's just not
You don't see
my
yourself
vibe.
as a taste maker,
Mm,
or do you?
well, I've never thought of that before. I will tell you, I was really, really, really privileged to grow up in Minneapolis back in the 80s when Levu Chule was running the place.
You're talking
And
about the Guthrie.
the Guthrie,
Yeah.
yeah. And he was a Romanian director who, got in trouble under communism. And he started inviting all these people to the Guthrie. And I didn't have any idea what I was seeing, except I knew it was fabulous. There was a production of The Seagull that actually started with the last act. And I had never seen The Seagull before. I was 20 years old. So
Hmm.
I was like, so the next time I saw The Seagull, or maybe I read it between, but anyway, he took these outrageous leaps
So the
with
next
the
time you saw the
text.
seagull, you thought, "What? This is the wrong way
Yeah,
around."
yeah,
It's
yeah.
supposed to
Someone's
end with
screwing
her
around with
saying,
this.
"Right."
No, but also he did Guys and Dolls. He did Candide. So he would, as an artistic director, he again, there was a beautiful balance of this whacked out Eastern European stuff coming in, and that was balanced with, sometimes maybe the importance of being earnest, but with a really original take on it.
Mm.
And if I have any inspiration, it was that whole wonderful
Fascinating.
time.
I
Uh,
get it.
and and like Joanne Akalitis was directing there, Richard Foreman was directing there.
Amazing.
And those are, now they're household names. At the time, they were, mid-career maybe. So yeah, it was
That's
fabulous. And if I can help engender that attitude towards live performance in some of the students at NYU, or just people who want to come see something, it's like the magic of live performance. There's just, theaters are very holy type places, and
mm.
I love being able to invite people into that space.
It's interesting to hear that. It's a wonderful connection, Jay. Your your youthful exposure to these great artists, these outside the box thinkers who came to the heartland,
Hmm.
who wanted to introduce audiences not just in the on the coasts to avant-garde and original thinking, and to think that now you've digested that somehow, you've ingested it, and that sort of is it does inform your aesthetic. It does inform what you
Absolutely.
and that does seem like it's a very good match for NYU, which of course has the Tisch School, which is a preeminent performing arts laboratory and educational
Hmm.
resource. So, I mean, there does feel like you landed interestingly in a place that was receptive to to your own experience.
Totally. And that's why I say I'm so lucky. But I do love musicals, and people kind of find that odd if they don't know me well or just know
Right,
me by,
right, right, right.
work. But musicals are the most theatrical types of plays you can really
Hmm.
encounter.
Of course.
Doesn't mean they're all good, but so for me, it's really that theatricality of the musical that like gets me excited.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's also, it's a quintessentially American form. I mean, we perfected it. I mean, it comes from operetta and other
Hmm.
European influences, but it's a parasitic form. It takes its influence anywhere it can get it. But there's no shame in being there's nothing not highbrow to me about saying you love musicals. I'm curious also though, Jay, when you're traveling, and I know I've been in touch with you when you're going to Greece to a festival at Ephesus or somewhere. I don't even know where you're going, Epidaurus or whatever the hell, or you're in Belgium or you're in the Netherlands. And you're what do you find that that European and Asian and African, Latin American theater makers, do you find they're as are they better informed about what we do than we are about what they do?
Yes. Yes. Part of that is, the internet. And also the United States has always exported movies and television and
Hmm.
whatnot. Yeah, we have no idea what's going on out there. I mean, some of us do, but
Right.
those of us who are professionally curious, or there's so much going on out there that uh, I do think the American audience has gotten fairly conservative in its taste and its
Hmm.
expectations.
Hmm.
I think most theater nowadays, if it doesn't have a narrative, a straightforward narrative, people find it odd or something. I'll go back to one song. There is a narrative there, but it's all over the map,
Right.
and so, so that's going back to what we were talking about earlier, that I hope the people who come to Skirball know that they might be a little bit challenged in what they're seeing.
Hmm.
Um, Counting and Cracking was challenging in a different way, and also I do have to say that that was the public and Skirball in a total partnership. So I
Right.
don't want to take credit for
Sure. You
for
did a
all of
co-pro,
the. It was a total co-presentation. Let us even be
co-presentation.
more
Sorry.
accurate.
Yes. Got it.
So, but that was a 3.5 hour long show that went by very quickly. I've
Totally.
not had that kind of time sense in the theater for a while, where it just
Agree
flies by.
completely.
But it was a very theatrical show as well in its direction, using live translation on stage. That slip and slide thing when they went to the beach.
Oh,
I mean, again, it was such a theatrical experience. So, yeah,
yeah. I sent people to it, and I to a person, they thanked me.
yeah, it was, it it was great. And it was also the folks at Skirball loved it because we weren't flipping the space every week. It was like, it is nice when something comes
A
in
sit
and
down.
stays for a little bit and people can exhale because we're always inhaling, inhaling, inhaling. So, but I want to go back to this musical thing too, because I want to say this. When I was at Abrams, I had this dream. This was even before Daniel Fish uh, was at Bard, where Oklahoma originated. I always wanted to match up downtown quote unquote directors with these American classics. And I mean, anybody who's listening to this, take this idea and run with it, please. It's but like I would love to see Tina Satter direct Annie Get Your Gun. I wanted Richard Maxwell to direct his sister
So
in
Tina Satter, we
Lady in
know
the
was
Dark.
she directed on Broadway. She did Is This a Room, right? Didn't she do the
Exactly.
she did
And
that
the
wonderful piece
movie,
that ended up being filmed for, I don't know if it was Netflix or somebody else, but
yeah.
so
Uh,
Tina Satter, what did you say you want her to direct?
Annie Get Your Gun.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Because that most of her work has a very strong feminist sense to it,
Mm,
and she'll use trans performers, and she's just great at casting, and she's got a real, again, to overuse the word, theatrical sensibility. But then also Richard Maxwell, who's another downtown director, he just
sure.
had something that was in a art gallery down in the financial district.
Hmm.
But his sister, Jan Maxwell, who sadly died about 8 or
Great
9 years.
actress.
Um, yeah, I thought she'd be great in Lady in the Dark. And I just thought, man, they're such different people, Jan and Rich. I don't know if they ever would have worked together, but I would have
I
loved to
think
have
they
seen
did at
them.
the very beginning. I think they did one thing together early on, very early on, I think.
Yeah.
Before she sort of her career took off in a different direction. Richard Maxwell is again, for those who outside of New York who don't know, he's a very, very unique and theater mind. His theater sort of form is almost drained of emotion.
Mhm.
It's a
Flat
kind of
affect.
it's a flat affect performance, deadpan, and I love these matchups you're thinking of here, which leads to the question, of course, Jay. You have a theater.
Yes.
Okay, like how does this go beyond you musing on a podcast? Do you send these little ideas out into the universe beyond
Well,
this?
that's how Showboat happened. I've been talking with David. David's a downtown director, and I was said, David, would you ever do a musical?
Mm,
And
I love
and we
this.
we tossed the ideas around. At first, I thought, and you're not going to believe this. At first we were thinking about Gypsy.
I see
Seriously.
that.
I mean, it is a story of showbiz. But see, Showboat is too. That's what's interesting about both of them, are their backstage stories about show business. But then once we realized, no one is ever going to give the rights for
Right,
that
right,
to be screwed around with. So,
right.
doing a little research, saw that Showboat was coming into the public domain. We wouldn't have to worry about royalties, rights, all that other stuff. We could do what we wanted with it. So, once we settled on it, we actually announced it as almost the day after it went public, because we didn't want somebody else to jump on the announcement or jump on the idea.
Right, right, right,
So, because anybody can do it now.
right. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I think you have to. I think it's really case by case with the canon. I remember there was. I think Annie did a version of South Pacific
Oh,
very
yeah, and
famously.
Bogart,
Anne
at
Bogart.
NYU,
Yes.
but years ago, and the Richard Rogers and the Rogers and Hammerstein organization stepped in and shut it down because
Oh, they did. They didn't like. Wasn't it like set in a ward of some or some
it
a
was set
hospital?
in a psychiatric
Right.
ward, but it was being performed as therapy in a
Right.
therapeutic way.
Right. Which is a great
Um,
idea.
So yeah, so actually, if anyone kind of started this, it was I would say it was probably Anne. Um,
Well, and you got to say, I mean, the Cats, the Ballroom Cats was
yeah,
certainly
yeah,
inspirationally in the
yep,
same
yep.
vogue.
Totally. And you can even say that about Sunset Boulevard. I mean,
Right,
the one that's
right. Jamie
about ready to
Lloyd's
open, it's
production.
so 180 degrees opposite of the original
Hmm.
one. Uh, and I think superior in a way. It's not a show I really like or would have like gone out of my way to see, except people were saying it was so good. People such as yourself, actually.
Well, and now a Tony nominator, so I have to refrain from any
Okay,
public commentary on a
great.
Broadway production. But yes, I did review it when I was a critic at the Washington Post. And I am intrigued by this idea, though, Jay, that you're almost like an ambassador for theater. You now you are having more conversations with international theater artists than probably only a handful of American theater people.
We're having a lot. One problem is the space itself. It's a large stage. It's not large enough to bring some things I would love to bring. There's a piece called Rothko that's on a turntable, and our stage is literally about 8 inches too small.
That's a Polish
Um,
piece.
Yep, it's well Lithuanian,
Oh, it
but a
is
Polish
Lithuanian,
director.
actually.
No, you're right. The director's Polish. It came through the Lithuania State Theater. Um,
You're just not
there,
big enough?
it's not big enough, and also our fly space is truncated. You meaning that
Right.
some things, depending on how they're staged or designed, wouldn't fly all the way out. They would like fly 2/3 of the way out. You can see the bottom still. But see, these are behind the scenes stories that most people
Sure.
wouldn't know. And there's
Right.
also these incredibly ugly gold columns on either side of the proscenium that we frequently cover unless the artist wants them. The cunning and cracking people use them to good effect. But the theater design, it was like that postmodern architecture
Uh-huh.
of the early 2000s. And
Right.
I guess in 40 years from now, they might look back and say, "Oh, that's a classic of postmodern theater design." Right now, it just
Yeah.
bothers me.
No, the theater interiors of a certain vintage. I even think of what's now called the David Koch Theater at Lincoln Center, which was the New York State Theater. If it's really, it's a nice space viewing wise, but the interior design is hideous.
And they
Um,
redid that. Remember when it was
yeah.
one long row?
Yes. Right.
And so if you sat in the middle,
Yeah.
you were
It took
like,
you.
and if you had claustrophobia, you were stuck.
Yeah, and after the show, you were there for a good half hour after
Yeah,
yeah,
waiting for everybody to get
waiting
out.
to file out.
Yep.
It's true. So before we finish up here, Jay, what else should we be looking? What are the things people will now say, Skirball, what else are you doing? So you've got January basically is going to be Showboat.
We're about ready to announce this spring. Two big things. Florentina Holsinger, who's this outrageous German choreographer, she just had a piece at the Vienna Festival that had all these naked nuns in it on roller skates and whatnot. She came to Abrams when I was there, so I've known her for a long time, and then we had her back right before COVID with a piece called Apollon. This is called Tanz,
Called
and
what?
Tanz, Tanz, the German
Okay,
for dance.
tons.
And this is going to be wild. She's got even bigger shows that we can't bring. The
Right.
most recent one has a helicopter and swimming pool.
Oh my
But this
God.
is outrageously inventive and out there. Probably the highlight for me is Robert Wilson is coming back to New York. We're
Oh
bringing
really?
a production of his I had name dropped earlier, but Isabelle Hubert is in it. It's called Mary Said What She Said, and it's performed in French, but it is about Mary Queen of Scots, which makes perfect sense because
Hmm.
a lot of time in Paris.
Yeah, she was the queen
Yeah, and it's a one.
of
It's
France.
yeah, yeah, and it's a one-person show, and it's total Bob Wilson.
Oh my God.
It's travels with 35 people, even though there's one person on stage.
That's a Robert Wilson. Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
Technically complicated.
Exactly. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's
When
going
is
to be a
that?
longer run for us. That's the last week of February. We're going to be doing 5, possibly 6 performances.
And Tons is when?
Right before that, actually. And
Fantastic.
then we're bringing employees. The guy who directed Rothko that I was talking about earlier, the
Mm-hmm.
Polish Lukas Towarski, is called Employees, and it's really more an art. He calls it an art installation, but it's a rave. It's the audience will sit on stage, and I mean the audience will be free to move around. It's it's I'm going to say a typical Skirball piece. It's hard to describe.
Yeah. Hearing you talk, Jay, I think, I know, we don't want to say that there is not experimentalism in this country and that there aren't artists who really are working in interesting ways. But, I yearn for what you're describing because I feel like when I see these pieces, it really is personal growth. I really do find myself challenged and thinking about theater in ways I hadn't thought about it before with all the pluses and minuses. They're not always, you don't love everything about
No,
everything, but that's not the point. There
yeah.
is always something to really appreciate. And I love actually walking into a theater, and I feel like this is something that Skirball does for me. I love walking in and not knowing what really I'm about to see, and that
Well,
has happened to me far too disappointingly infrequently at other theaters.
we're trying to pick up that slack. One of the worst things to happen in New York City was the demise of the Lincoln Center Festival. You know how
Hmm.
much fun that was every summer to like go see
Totally,
some really whacked out stuff.
totally.
So with that gone, with the White Light Festival gone, we truly are trying to kind of offset that imbalance. So and just to keep that vibe alive somewhat in New York City.
And that is that is a sacred mission, Mr. Wegman. So I thank you for revealing a little bit about what you bring to audiences, and I would say that that the upcoming Robert Wilson and Tons and
The employees.
and Showboat all sound like worthy entries. So
Thank you.
thank you again. It's a
Thank you for the
pleasure.
chat.
Yes, this was all. And next time we'll talk only about the Wicked movies, something
Oh,
like that.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, that's it for today. Elizabeth, the word to you, we missed you, but we'll hear Elizabeth's dulcet Corsican inflected tones again on the next podcast. So look for news of what we have coming up then. In the meantime, you can subscribe by going to marksvincentelli.substack.com and please consider a paying subscription because where else are you going to hear Jay Wegman talking about Skirball, right? So
Yeah.
anyway,
Naked
you
women
want
hanging from motorcycles
there you
in
go,
towns.
and nuns on roller skates without. I mean,
Naked nuns.
yeah, really, exactly. So for more quality conversation of this kind, tune back in here. As Elizabeth might say, au revoir, mon ami, and we'll see you next time.